Okay. Go back here, Otis. In verse 5, and we who are many are one body in Christ. People that are right now sitting home listening to this that are Christians are part of this body. People that are at a church somewhere, in a service, enjoying it, they're part of this body. Each one of us are part of the body. Now, what's the problem? What's the problem here? Look at 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Now, it's interesting because the Corinthian church, when you read about these guys, they really got a hold of acting out on the gifts that they had and using these gifts and they really got crazy about it. And Paul had to say, look, there was a reason, there was a purpose, there was a meaning for this. Each one of you have a gift. Now there's a meaning for it. Now look at 1 Corinthians chapter 12. For even as the body is one, and yet many members, and all the members of the body, though they are many, are all one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit we're all baptized into one body, whether Jew or Greek, whether slave or free, we are all made to drink of one Spirit. For the body is not one member, but many. If the foot should say, because I'm not a hand, I'm not part of the body, it is not for this reason any less a part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I'm not part of the body, it is not for this reason any less part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? If the whole body were hearing, where would the sense of smell be? But now God has placed the members. God has placed the members. God placed the members, each one of them in the body just as he desired. And if they were all one member, where would the body be? But now there are many members, but one body. The eye cannot say, I have no need of you. Again, the head to the feet, I have no need of you. You see, each one of us is an important part of this body. Do you guys understand? That's what the new church, you got to understand. This new movement, God wants us to find our place, what we need to be doing, where we're at in this body, and living it out, and doing those things. Each one of us are an important part of this body. And then Ephesians says, and you don't have to turn that, but I'll tell you this because we're going to go to the next thing here. Ephesians says, what is the purpose of all this? That we might become into unity, building each other up, and becoming in a perfect unity as of Christ. That we are Christ on this earth, that we build each other up, perfecting one another, that we can be this member, this one body as Christ on this earth. That's what we just read in Ephesians. That we can have the fullness of Him who fills all in all. That when we walk on this earth, we walk as Christ would walk. We live as Christ would live. That when we speak, it's the words that Christ would say. It's living Jesus on this earth. That's the meaning. That's the purpose. And that freaks people out. Some people might even say that's heresy. You know? Remember, what was it, back about 20 years ago or so? A lot of these faith preachers came out and started talking about being little gods and started freaking everybody out. Like, oh, you know, that guy said you're a little god and that's wrong, that's evil. Well, I'm not going to really get into that. It is kind of interesting that Psalms does say that He made us just a little lower than God. But what I want to say is that when we cower away from our authority, what God meant for us on this earth. And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to be very, very clear about it. And if I upset some people, that's fine. God gave us the authority to bring about things on this earth. If God is just going to do everything, you know, that's really, it's funny because we have a lot of Eastern ideas that we're just like a little puppet, and God's just kind of putting on a little puppet show, just kind of making us do whatever He wants, and we just got to deal with it all. And that's never a Christian idea. That's a Buddhist, Hinduist idea. That's not a Christian idea. Never has been from the beginning. You know, if Jesus was going to just go out and save people based upon whoever He wanted to save, then He'd never tell you to preach the gospel. If Jesus was just going to heal people based upon who He wanted to heal and who He didn't, He'd never tell you to go lay hands on the sick. You know, if Jesus was just going to make these things happen and you had no say-so over it, then there would have never been telling you to do anything, right? But that's not true. We are Jesus on this earth. God will not bring about His plan on this earth unless His body acts on it. Just in the same way that you can have a nice big fat dinner sitting in front of you and you will starve to death if you never pick it up and eat it. It's the same thing. God needs you to do something. It has nothing to do, and so people get caught up on what you got to do to be saved and all this. You don't have to do anything to be saved, but you do have to do something to get God's will to come about. That's where the work comes in. Paul says it, work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for God who works in you to bring about his will. That's why Jesus said to pray, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It's meant for us. We need to do something. Becoming more like Jesus. And it's interesting because becoming more like Jesus, and like Paul says here, to be able to build each other up, it takes a degree of selflessness, to be self-sacrificial. If you didn't think giving up things or sacrificing yourself to help other people benefited you, then you wouldn't do it. Why are people so selfish anymore? I want to just, if you don't get anything out of anything I say today, get this. Why are people so selfish? It's because they don't see themselves as part of something bigger. They see the ultimate of their life is them. This is their universe. So why am I going to hurt me when I'm the center of my universe? Why am I going to sacrifice things that, why am I going to go out and try to help somebody? Why am I going to, be nice to you? Why am I just, when I'm the center of the universe? Sacrifice has no value when you don't see it as part of a bigger picture. That's why Jesus said the church is a foundation. It's a bunch of stones all put together. So when I know that when I sacrifice myself to help you, then it makes sense because it's part of a bigger plan, a bigger purpose. The men that gave their lives to be burned at the stake, men that gave their lives to be murdered and destroyed and had their families taken, the horrible things that happened to people in the first century for the church to stay alive. If it was just about them, they would have never did it, but they saw themselves as something bigger. They saw themselves as part of this foundation. All of these stones all working together. It's easy to be selfish when you think you're the center of the universe. But when you see that you're part of something bigger, it's easy to sacrifice. I was thinking that when I watched that movie last night, Star Trek, and and I was the very beginning of the movie. And I don't, I'm not reading anything. It's the very beginning of the movie, but when you see it's the main character, James Kirk or whatever, and his dad is, basically giving his life so he can help get his son and all those other people off that ship. He's running his ship into the Nero ship, and just to be able to say he's sacrificing himself. And it's an amazing picture. It shows, and there's one scene where you see, James Kirk, he's kind of throwing away his life a little bit, and one of the captains, get a hold of him and say, look, 18 minutes of your dad being a captain, he saved 800 people, including yourself. What are you going to do with your life? Seeing yourself as part of something bigger, sacrifice makes sense. Being selfless makes sense. Giving your life for someone else makes sense when you see yourself as part of something bigger. That's the church. The problem with the church today is we've become so turned in. We've become so selfish. We've only looked at just our own little building, our own little group of people, and that's it. We've missed out on the giant, huge plan that God has for this world. I hear people say, and I'm going to step on some of your theology, but I hear people say, Jesus is going to come any day. Jesus is going to come any day. I don't believe that. You know why? Because we're not doing our job. If we want Jesus to come today, then we need to be doing something. Jesus isn't just going to show up one day because he wants to. That's what people have this idea. And I'm not, if you believe that way, it's great. I don't. I believe the church is going to bring about the rapture because we went out and done his will. He's not going to come until every single person has heard the gospel. Every single person has had the opportunity to receive him. And then he's going to come. It's not about, we just got to wait. We got to just hang out here and maybe someday he's going to take us. No. We got to be doing something. We got to be going out into the world. We got to be praying for people. We got to be giving. We got to be helping. We got to be doing these things because it's all part of a big plan. It's amazing because you read a good book to read, John Fox's Book of Martyrs. It'll mess you up because it talks about some of these graphic things that people went through for their faith. But then you see it in that light, that these people were willing to die because they knew that blood that they shed, that when they gave their life to not deny Christ, they knew that we would have the opportunity to sit here in this home and hear the same gospel. They knew someday someone else will be able to hear the gospel.